And he and I had the greatest time. We'd go out to eat, you know, every time I was in town. He didn't live in the same town. And we just have a great time. Well, his father had cancer, went through a year of that trauma. And at the end, he found Jesus. And then when we had our next meal, it was Jesus. Well, we had to pray first, which blew my mind because he'd never done that before. And then it was every other sentence. It was Jesus did this for me, Jesus did that for my family. I'm doing this for my kids because Jesus wants me to. I mean, after 2 meals like that, I'm not ever going to supper with this guy again. I don't want to hear about Jesus all the time. He was a perfectly normal, very successful engineer. So he's no dummy. Perfectly successful engineer until he got Jesus. And I think he's lost 2 promotions because he got Jesus. He's too focused on doing what Jesus wants him to do and not what his family really needs him to do in any way. Physical sickness or God virus. These guys, he didn't get Allah, did he? He got Jesus. Because that was the God virus he was exposed to at about the age 5 to 7 years old. That's the one you're probably going to go back to as an adult if you get Jesus. How many of you know somebody who got Jesus when they're in their 30s, 40s, you know, later in life? Okay. Now, you don't need to answer this now, but just in your own head, what religion did they grow up in? And did they tend to go back to that religion? Now, maybe they were born a Baptist and they went back to Nazarene. Those are really close. But they didn't grow up a Baptist and become a Muslim. That's really, really rare. Probably a result of something else going on, some psychopathology maybe, but it's certainly not, probably not because they were susceptible, because they probably got the antibodies to those other religions. Who's the most famous, who's the most famous convert? St. Paul. Good. That was a reading contest. You can read the answer. Yep, St. Paul. And you know, we can see what I call a conversion syndrome in St. Paul, but most new converts to religion behave the same way St. Paul did. You'll notice that there's changes in their tone of voice, their nonverbal behavior, their gestures. They tend to imitate certain people. They oftentimes imitate the people who converted them. So if a minister converted them, you'll hear them imitating the voice, cadence, and words of that particular minister. I've never seen a Baptist convert start imitating a priest. It just doesn't happen. Humans learn best through imitation. I mean, it's the most efficient way to learn. That's how you learn the language you speak. You heard it, you imitated it. It's how you learn the gestures that you speak because it's part of your culture. You didn't learn it by going to school. You knew it all before you even got the first class in school. Well, religion's the same way. You learn all this stuff through imitation. And that's what's happening to you when you're 5 to 7 years old. And you feel comfortable with that. You may have left religion and been non-religious for 20 years. But when you're under stress, you want to go back to something that makes you feel comfortable. And that's the God virus that you were infected with at that age. So, the mimicking thing is really cool. If you find somebody that's been recently converted, and I mean recently, because things happen after a while, but if they're like in the first 2 or 3 months of conversion, try and find out who converted them, and go and talk to that person, and watch their behavior. And what you'll see is very similar behavior between the converter and the convertee, down to the very words they use and the very types and syntax they use, which is unusual and abnormal, perhaps, for what they were doing before they got converted. They'll cut themselves off from social groups. I mean, my friends, he cut himself off from me pretty quick. He changed his behavior so radically, I didn't want to be around him anymore. They'll reduce contact with their own family. I mean, some religions virtually cut you off. I mean, cults especially. But it doesn't just take cults. Some major religions will cut you off from family. And if I had, well, some of my families stopped interacting with me altogether since I came out as an atheist a few years ago. And it's not good. I cut themselves. I still email them. I still try and call them. They just don't answer my phone calls quite as often, and they never answer my emails. I didn't cut them off. They cut themselves off from me. But that's what the God virus requires. So let's learn about infection channels. There are major infection channels, and I'm going to go over some of these, but not all. Hypnosis, I'll come back and talk about that and give you some examples. stress. We've already talked about stress and how it works. Guilt, we'll come back and get in some detail about that as we go on. Social needs. People come to church because they are social creatures. We're primates. We need other people. And so as a result, we come to church to get our social needs met, but we can't leave until we're infected with that God virus. As an atheist, you've got social needs. Some of you came here tonight. You come here to hear me. You came here to talk with some of your friends. That's fine. I'm not insulted by that. You've got to have emotional contact with other people. And that's normal. But what if you can't get it here? What if you go to a church? Go to a church. They'll let you in for about 4 weeks. And keep asking those stupid questions. Pretty soon they're going to say, despite what our sign says out front, you're not welcome. And they will let you know in nonverbal terms. They never just kick you out usually. But you know, don't go to their Sunday school class and ask, you mean you really believe the earth's only 6,000 years old? They probably get a little upset about that. So that's the social media. All of these together, and I did not talk to Jason about this in the dance, this is a total coincidence. When you put all of these together, here's what you get. Now you'll notice that I have Sarah Palin up here. I do not have John McCain. John McCain is not infected with this scald virus. She has a very insidious variety in her. It's called Pentecostalism. Have any of you seen this YouTube video? Yeah. This is Sarah Palin being blessed by a witch hunter in Africa who prides himself on running women out of their villages they were born and raised in because they're witches. Sarah Palin's being blessed by him 3 years ago. She has never disavowed him. If you watch the video, she praises him to the hilt of how he is doing such good work in Africa. He praises her to the hilt for being such a good governor and bringing God into the governor's house, governor's office in Alaska. That's pretty crazy. We've got people who are really infected with this kind of stuff, and people are listening to them. I think this woman is dangerous in many ways. She's dangerous because religious hypnosis is a technique to create a quasi-meditative state and relaxation response paired with a guilt message. Now the key is it has to be paired with a guilt message. It opens the host up to potential infection, or it provides a booster shot for the person. That's why people go to church every Sunday. They need to get the booster shot. Now think about a virus, biological virus. In order for a biological virus to get from me to Debbie, it has to have the key to open her cells up. And if it has no key, it can't get in there. There's probably 200 rhinoviruses that cause the common cold. You and I are probably immune to 150 of them for whatever reason. But there's still 50 of them that could infect me and might be able to infect Debbie. That's why you might have a cold, but your husband or your kids don't get the cold, because they've already got the immunities to it. It's got to have the key. But if it's got the key, I don't have my keys on me, do I? If you got the key to get into that particular person as a biological virus, then it can open it up and propagate and then make more viruses, and it spreads out when you sneeze. Brothers and sisters, I want you to feel the power of the Holy Spirit. I want you to feel how strong the Lord can follow right into your heart. I want you to open your heart up and let Jesus come in. Now, those are very simple techniques. The techniques are using cadence and breathing. If I had you in my office,